Hi, so I just wanted to make a quick video explaining the main reason why it's important to join in the gender critical movement and put a halt to the practice of puberty blocking of children. Should be common sense, but it isn't anymore because of the fervent trans activism, which has managed to capture the upper echelons of the medical establishment by creating this echo chamber amongst journalists, among experts, among politicians, and creating this no dissent activism. It has led to serious consequences, and it will continue to do so if people are not courageous enough to become outspoken and become educated on the topic. Which means deconstructing some of the prevailing new norms that we're starting to accept as a society. One of which being that children can consent to puberty blockers. It's absolutely not the case. It used to be something that we would take a wait and see approach to. Before the affirmative model came into practice, it was clinicians and doctors would wait and see. They would do watchful waiting, which means people have gender dysphoria and they know that the majority of them will outgrow it. They also know that the majority of those children also grew up to be homosexual or bisexual. So that makes 2 points. One, we need to be more careful and recognize that if the majority desisted, which is what we call desistance is when you initially have strong feelings of gender dysphoria, but then you desist from, you do not transition, you desist from transition. That's called a desister. The majority were disisters. That's what we call the Desistance Literature. There's a number of studies that show that high rates of desistance. If that's true, then there's also a second point. The overrepresentation of homosexuality and bisexuality among desisters and among persisters, those who go on with transition. Well, that proves one thing. That proves that trans identity and homosexuality can be linked like this, which means it's really important if you're gay and if you're lesbian to be paying attention to this issue, because these could be future versions of you. These could have been you. So we really have to be careful about what we're allowing medical professionals to do to these children. Obviously they say that the child is going along with it too and wants to go through with these procedures, but how can you really consent to something that is so extreme? How can you really consent to something, keeping in mind that the brain develops until age 25? I think that's a really important point that we keep forgetting, is that the brain develops until age 25. We're doing this, we're breaking all the rules. We're giving puberty blockers from 9 to 13. We're giving adolescent girls as early as, I believe, 13. Maybe even younger, but yeah, 13, 14, 15, 16. And we're doing vaginoplasties as early as 17, 18. Jazz Jennings was 17 when he got his vaginoplasty. So what does that mean? I mean, that means that the lines are being broken. They're crossing the red line here. And it also means that we need to redefine how we're looking at. Look at the example of Scott Newgent. Scott Nugent is a trans man who had their surgery as an adult, but also regrets their lower phalloplasty, their surgery complications. So that kind of goes against the prevailing norm that adults can make decisions about this, And I think it's also important to talk about social transition, because gender nonconformity is fine. That's great. But telling someone that because they're gender nonconforming that they are the other sex, when we know that among those children we're telling that mythology to, some of them may get on puberty blockers and some of them may go on to cross-sex hormones, and maybe an even smaller amount will go on and get the full surgery. I think that's unethical. I think that's why this ideology is so unethical, because it's dangerous to insist that knowing full well that it might convince someone who is not apt to make that decision to go ahead with something that, I mean, frankly, wouldn't want to wish on anyone. You know, that's the thing we're missing here, is there's a disconnect. When you watch the surgical procedures, when you understand what's actually being done, that's when you realize that can't ethically condone that. You can't ethically condone that, especially to someone whose brain is not fully developed. So yeah, just wanted to make that point. And remember the desistance literature, remember the overrepresentation of homosexuals and bisexuals, and remember that children cannot consent to this. Anyways, thanks.